Today we're going to be learning how to draw a crystal ball, a glass marble, whatever you want to call this little guy. But before we can do this, we need to know the concepts of how to draw a sphere because this glass ball is spherical. So we're going to start by talking about the lines that we put on the sphere, and then we will talk about how to shade it and how light is shown on a glass, round, spherical object. We're going to start on the back of the paper. We're going to do a little sample. We're going to write our name. So Mrs. K. Then we are going to take a round object. You can either take a stencil or you can take a cup. In this case, I am using a honey jar. Raw honey is really yummy, but I'm not eating it today. Just using it as a tracer. It's okay if you have a few stray lines, but try to do your best to keep them straight, especially for our next circle when we are shading. Alright, so now what we're going to do, I'm going to do this dark, you guys are going to do this light, so that you can always erase if you mess up. I am doing it dark because unfortunately you can't see it unless I do it dark. This doesn't have to be perfect, but find the point that you think looks like the center. You are going to draw a straight line across and another straight line across. So we got a vertical straight line and a horizontal straight line. You can kind of think of it this way. If you cut an orange in half, it has a flat surface on the bottom. So this is that flat surface. No matter how you cut an orange, if you cut it in half perfectly, it will have a flat side. But the rest of it is round. It's round here, it's round here, it's round everywhere. So now we got to talk about how to put those rounded lines in. Again, if you look at my lines, they're not perfectly centered. The closer to perfect you can get it, the better, but for this exercise it doesn't need to be perfect. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to start with those rounded lines. So you want the widest part of your line to be right here at the center, the skinniest part to be at the top and the bottom. So we got one right there. Two. Again, you want these to be round. This should not look like a diamond. This should look like a very, very skinny football. The next one is going to look more like an actual football. So again, skinniest part right here, widest part in the middle, and then down. Do the same thing on this side. Try to make them as even as you can. My next one, you're going to see that I did not space this out perfectly, but it's not going to make a huge deal. As long as your widest part is right here, your skinniest part is at the top, and you are doing rounded lines, not straight. Alright, so it's looking kind of round. Now to make it even rounder, what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to do it horizontally. Now, if like me, if that seems a little weird to you, all you got to do is turn your paper the other way, like this. And now we do the same thing. So again, this line where it's straight is your widest point. Top and the bottom are your skinniest points. Skinny, wide, skinny. Skinny, wide, skinny. Skinny, wide, skinny, skinny, wide, skinny, skinny, wide, And let's do one more on this side. Skinny, wide. Skinny. Just like that. Now we have something that actually looks like a sphere, no matter how you turn it. So, now when you're thinking about shading, which we're going to do in the next exercise, however you shade, it needs to be along these lines. So let's say I'm trying to make this side darker. Between this line and this line, it's curved. So I need to curve like this, even if I'm going from dark to light. And let's say that darkness continues down like this. Still need to keep it going that way. Okay, let's say we're shading the top part of it. Let's say the darkness is at the top. There's like a shadow looming over or something. This part is round, so you gotta follow that roundness. And it goes to here, which is also round. We're going to go dark to light. So as long as you remember that every single part of this sphere is round, except for maybe right here in the middle. So right here, if I shaded, I could get away with doing it straight, and it really wouldn't mess it up. But the closer you get to the edges, it has to stay round. All your shading lines need to be round, whether you're shading with the side of your pencil. But you also don't want it too round. So this rounds like this. If you go like that and you put these little C's on it, you're going to mess it up. It's going to look like it has pimples or something. So you want to make sure that you follow the roundness of a general sphere. Now this one, I really just wanted to show you a line. The next one, we're going to get into shading. So you don't need to worry about if you didn't catch on to shading right now. So, without further ado, this is the back of your paper. Now we're going to flip our paper over, so it should be fresh, and we are going to start on our crystal ball. So again, we're going to start out with tracing a circle. This can be in the middle of your paper, it could be the top of your paper. I'm going to put it slightly over to the left. You want to make this as neat as possible. The edge is the most important part in this picture. You want to try to get the edge right the first time, because the more you erase, the blurrier the edge is going to look. So I drew mine somewhat light. I think you guys can all see it. Okay, so with glass has a lot of reflections in it. Glass shows light and glass shows darkness very, very easily and not always consistently. So we're gonna start by drawing the darker parts first. So in this case, now this is based off a photograph that I saw of a marble without an inside. It's just a clear ball. So we're going to draw a line, leave a little space, just like that. Then we're going to draw another line up here at the top to show where our darker parts are going to be. Here's a reminder of what we are drawing. Okay, now we can always make things darker, but we can't necessarily make them lighter. If you make it too dark, it's going to be very hard to erase it. And like I said, we want to make sure we get the edge right the first time. So along this edge, you can go relatively dark, but not as dark as possible. So I am using the side of my pencil. I'm putting a decent amount of pressure on it. I'm going to do my first reflection of light right here on this white spot. And my second reflection of light, I'm going to leave this white for now, but later on I'm going to shade over it because it's not as bright as that one. And you can see I'm using a little less pressure right here. If you are unclear with this video about a certain spot that I am shading, then you can do what I'm doing right now. You can shade it dark, but not super dark until you're 100% sure what you want. I'm shading all around this outline, pretty dark. I'm going to leave a little gap here for a little reflection. Okay. Now I'm pretty sure I want to leave these parts super dark, so I'm going to go over them, make them a little darker. Let's see, I think that's about it. Maybe bring this down a little bit more. Bring this up. Okay, now I want this part up here to be pretty dark. Again, be very, very careful on that edge. You want to stay within your circle line that you drew, because one thing that will break the illusion that this is a three-dimensional sphere is if it is wonky looking. I'm going to add a little bit of darkness right here along this side and right along this edge. Again, super, super careful that you are not messing up that outer circle. Alright, still looks circular. I think we're good. Maybe a little bit more in here. A little bit darker. We just finished with our core shadows. Now we are going to go on to our mid-tones. So we've got our darkest dark, or black. Now we are going to go to dark gray. So we're going to come around here, and we are going to put pressure on the pencil, but we don't want it as dark as we did the last lines. Again, if you guys notice, I am going with those imaginary rounded lines that we did in the beginning. So none of my lines around this edge are straight lines. They are all extra curvy. Okay, I'm going to fill in this area a little bit. Maybe dark, maybe I didn't get that dark enough. Right there. It's okay if you see a spot that needs to be darker, just make it darker. And we're going to come in here, make this part dark, but not all the way. Trying to watch the screen to see what you guys are seeing at the same time while I'm watching my paper. Not a great idea. You guys need to keep your eyes on your paper, so don't let anybody distract you. No people, no animals, no creaky floors, creaky walls. You just pretend nothing is around you and nothing is going to keep you from getting this drawing done. Again, you want this to be a middle tone, so you don't want it to be light gray. You want it to be a pretty dark gray. And alright, now that we got that part done, we're going to do this fun little star thing, which is a burst of light coming onto the edge. This one can be a little hard. So if you have the option, you might want to watch first and then rewind the video. Worst case scenario, just start out light and then go over it when you think you got it right. Again, this is middle tones, so you want it to be somewhat darker. Especially as you get a little further away. You also want to keep up the idea that it is round. If you are above the imaginary halfway line, you want to round it this way. If you are below, you want to round it this way. And you want to make sure that these white streaks are also round, straight, because this one's pointing to the middle. Round. Actually, that one could be a little rounder. There we go. The rounder that is, the more realistic your picture will look. Let's see. There we go. Keep with those middle tones. Now there are some parts we're going to go over with light tones, so you want to leave those parts in. Again, we are rounding. This. Bring a little more out here. Make sure these are dark to medium dark. because we're going to come in with the light in a minute. If it turns out they're not dark enough, you can always go back and make them darker. Okay, now we're going to add in the lighter tones. We are going to start with another little star thingy right here, a star reflection of light. This one is closer to the middle, so you don't have to worry so much about those rounded lines. But you want to leave that white, because again, once you go over that white, there's no turning back. Unless, of course, you want to be using a white pencil. But I think that's more effort than it's worth. So as I'm shading this lightly, I'm realizing that I probably am going to want to go back and make my darker midtone, my midtones darker. Alright, so we got our little star there. We have some, I think I want to make this dark midtone a little higher. And now I'm going to take my light, I'm going to fill this area in this area. And then we said we'd come back. Now, I'm not going in any particular order, just choosing what I think is the most important. I'm going to put midtones in there. I think I'm going to leave this section bright. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to leave a reflection right here. Again, we want to keep up with the roundness because this is closer to the edge. You can go along vertically shading, or you can go along horizontally, your choice. I kind of like to mix it up. I think we're going to leave another little spot right here for some light, but let's try not to make that darker. Let's still try to keep that our light tones. Remember, if you are above the halfway line, you want to be curving up and around. If you are below, you want to be curving around this way. Alright, we are almost there. It's starting to look like something. We're going to go back in. We're going to make our darks a little bit darker. I'm going to add to here. I'm making this just a tad bit darker. I'm going to add in a little darkness right here. Again, I'm keeping this round. Now keep in mind, I am drawing this, I'm not doing the greatest job drawing this to the video so that you guys can see. I'm trying to make it look to me what it should look like, because it's a little hard as I'm drawing it to remember what you guys are seeing on the video. So everything I'm drawing is actually slightly darker than what you guys are seeing. Now, let's see what happens when we're going to smear some of this with our finger. Oh, but you know what? Before we do, let's get our shadow done. So let's keep everything pretty rough until we get our shadow. Okay? So with the shadow, you're going to come up about halfway. You don't want any hard lines. So I'm doing this very scratchy, I guess you could use the term. Just like that. Now it's got a reflected light right here, which means that same reflected light is also going to reflect in the shadow. It is a little hard to grasp, but I will show you as best I can. So in this case, we want the part that's touching the ball to be pretty dark. And now we actually want to skip a certain area because that is where our highlight is going to be. Even shadows can have highlights. I know it sounds weird. I'm going to do like a star-shaped highlight. Just like that. So I'm shading this in. Alright, now it looks very, very rough and gritty, but in a minute we're going to smear all this and make it much more like a crystal ball. I'm going to do a little bit lighter around the edge of this, get this middle part a little bit darker. Like that. We're going to do another reflected shadow right here, because glass tends to have two reflections. And this shadow is going to overlap this one. I want this shadow to be lighter. But right in here we've got some reflected light, so we're going to show that in our shadow. We got this shadow coming up over here, making it a little darker, and then we've got our reflected light. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take our finger, any finger you desire. We're going to try not to smear the edges. We're just going to try to smear the inside. We're also going to try not to smear too close to the white parts. We want to get mostly those midtones to smear together. So again, stay away from the white parts. Get it along the edge of the white parts, that's okay. Also stay away from the edge of your sphere. Whoop, see, I smeared right over that white part there. That was bad. But what we'll do is we'll go back with an eraser and we'll fix it. Okay, this part's supposed to be gray, so I can smear that. And see how now it's looking a little more like glass, now that it doesn't have the roughness of the pencil. And be careful on the edges, you don't want to mess up your edges. And no, I'm not talking about hair edges, just regular old edges. Okay, we're going to go back in. We're going to, let's see, what else does this need? Missing something. I'm going to add a few more darks back in there. Yep. This a little darker, which will make that look a little whiter. Adding a few more curvy lines in there, just to emphasize that nice curve. Making some parts darker. And now, if you are so lucky as to have an eraser, I'm going to go back in. I'm going to erase a few things. That, you want to make sure your eraser is nice and clean. Put that little dot back in there. Again, see how I covered over it and now I can't get it as white as it was before? Kind of sucks, but that's the way it is. Sometimes you can just dot the eraser on there. That a little more round. And smear around this a little bit. I think I want this to be a little light gray, right around those edges. Same thing with this, I don't want that to be that white. And you're going to do the same thing with your shadows. Smear your shadows, make them a little bit softer. Now typically, by professionals, this is done with a rolled up piece of paper because you don't want the oils mixing with the graphite because it actually does have an effect on the graphite. It doesn't smear as well. But just to learn the basic concept, we are fine to shade with our fingers. Now you can tweak it however you want. If you see something that's bugging you, feel free to add a little bit or take away a little bit. That is your choice. As long as you follow those rules about keeping things round you should be good. So I'm just tweaking little parts, making certain parts darker. But I could probably do this for hours and it would never be perfect. So I think we're gonna call that almost done. Alright, I think I'm happy with that. So I'm going to leave that and call it done. Any smudges around your paper, it's nice to get rid of. And then at the very, very end, to officially call it done, you need to sign your name really small. Preferably in cursive, but if you have a cool signature, you can sign it however you want. And that is it.